Welcome back, everybody, to another KGC mock draft. We're about 2 weeks after the start of free agency. It's currently March 26th. It's a Thursday. A lot of big things happened since my last video. You have things like the Ravens pulling out of the Max Crosby trade. You have, of course, the major waves of free agency, with the Panthers being especially active on their defense. The Raiders made a lot of big moves. And the Broncos, of course, made a huge play to bring in Jalen Waddle from the Dolphins. And then, of course, you have Miami, who was barely active in free agency. They did sign Malik Willis, but now you have no weapons for him. And with the added rumors of Devon Achane being traded, we'll see what Miami has to work with this upcoming season. Of course, if you're new here, welcome in. If you've watched my videos before, welcome back. And of course, if you enjoy the video, hit that like and subscribe button. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new KGC take. But instantaneously, kicking it off with pick 1, the Raiders are an obvious pick in this draft. They're taking Fernando Mendoza with number 1. Quarterback of the future. They've built up that offense a good little bit for him. Hopefully they can take another wide receiver later in the draft, maybe even a lineman in the 3rd or 4th round to try and boost up the offensive line a bit. Overall, though, Mendoza's a great talent. I would love to see what he can do with that system, and I'm sure that he's going to be a top 15 quarterback later into his career. Now with the Jets at number 2, they already traded away Jermaine Johnson. They've made a few moves in free agency, nothing big, and they still have a lot of holes to fill out. You traded for Geno Smith. That's the most notable thing I remember about them. And they still have a lot of holes. I don't think they're going to take Arvell Reese with pick 2. I think they're going to take David Bailey. David Bailey's risen up as edge 1, especially after the combine and the measurements of Ruben Bain's arms. And I think Arvell Reese is still too raw of a talent to really be a playmaker in the first 2 years of his career. But I still think that the offensive tackle class in this draft is not strong enough for the Cardinals to take a move at number 3. Instead, I think that they will take a defensive playmaker. I think that they're going to take Arvell Reese. Hope that he can develop a bit behind the defensive veterans on their team, Budda Baker, Josh Sweat, and the rest of the people around him. The Titans at number 4, a big name that's come up for them, are Sonny Styles and Jeremiah Love. With tons of teams having brought in a new running back, teams like the Saints and the Chiefs having their new weapons in the backfield, they obviously I don't think would take Jeremiah Love if they fell to him. The only other team really in the top 10 or even 15 that I really see taking Love is the Washington Commanders. You look at the Titans right now, they're still very raw on offense. You have Cam Ward, who I think is going to be great these next few years. I think he'll pan out to be the best QB in his draft still. But the offense, outside of Cam Ward, Peter Skoronski's a great guard. You have Tyjae Spears, who, while he's a really good running back, he can't stay healthy. Shamir DK is one of the best returners in the league. Alec Aomanor, I think, has the potential to be great. Now you have Gunnar Helm as your main tight end, I believe. Overall, I think the offense needs the most help. And with your best wide receiver in this draft, I don't really know if he's worth, pick 4. Carnell Tate's solid, but I think Jeremiah Love is the second best talent in the draft, only behind Caleb Downs. And the Titans need a major playmaker who can last at running back. Tony Pollard did just quietly have another 1,000-yard season. But at the same time, he's not putting up the percentages that you want. He doesn't have the highest yards per carry. He's not being used in the red zone a lot. And behind him is Tyjae Spears, who is just injured too much to really be a bell cow back. I think Jeremiah Love can be the healthy bell cow running back who can get you the beautiful statistics that you need to help out a young quarterback like Cam Ward. Now the Giants at number 5. I think Sonny Styles showed how good he can be at the combine. He put up numbers better than Arvell Reese. Sonny Styles, I think, was always the better linebacker out of Ohio State. He's better in coverage. He is a great run defender. He might not be used as much as a pass rusher as maybe Arvell Reese would be. But at the same time, Giants released Bobby Okereke, who was a standout linebacker, I believe a team captain multiple times as well. You need someone to fit in to that interior of the defense. And Sonny Styles is a guy who I think can take a role very similar to Carson Schlesinger last year, and he can lead that defense almost immediately. Cleveland Browns at 6. They've become a very big talk. Don't completely know what their plans are. The draft is very interesting for them. You look at a lot of the people they've brought in over the offseason. They've gotten a few defensive players. So, as with Quincy Williams, they probably obviously wouldn't take a shot on maybe a CJ Allen here. They've brought in a lot of offensive linemen to help fill out their line. You have Zion Johnson, Titus Howard. They brought in Elton Jenkins, who the Packers released. He'll probably end up being their center. And they re-signed Tevin Jenkins to fill out the final guard spot. The only opening on their offensive line now is left tackle. That hasn't been figured out yet. But when you look at the tackle position, the two highest rated guys is Maui Goa and Fano, two guys who primarily played as a right tackle. Fano isn't even really being considered a tackle option in the league. A lot of people consider him to be more of a guard archetype. Monroe Freeling is the highest rated pure left tackle. And I don't think Monroe Freeling is worth a top 10 pick. He was rated as a third-round prospect before the Senior Bowl. Afterwards, he started skyrocketing up boards to now at the point that he's constantly being mocked at 6 to the Browns and is currently at 12 on the big board. I don't think it would be smart for the Browns to take him this early when you have such better options available. Carnell Tate for one. You had the worst offensive weapons in the league. Harold Fannin will be great, I'm sure. And all these other players. You have Isaiah Bond, who could develop into a good 2 or 3. You have Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson in the backfield, who could both be great. But overall, your weapons are very weak. I could see you taking maybe Caleb Downs, keeping him in Ohio as well. He is the best talent in the draft, in my opinion. And we saw last year, Andrew Berry was really going after talent. He took Quinshon Judkins in the second round. He took Harold Fannin in the third when a lot of people wouldn't have considered the Browns as needing a tight end. I don't think Monroe Freeling is currently the best talent. I think the best talent combined for need is going to be Carnell Tate. I feel like he could complement Jerry Jeudy a little bit better than someone like Mekhi Lemon would. And I think, Ohio State guy, keep him in town. I think Tate will be a very quick playmaker. And it would take some of the weight off Jerry Jeudy, who, while I think he's not going to last still as a starting receiver, he can still make the occasional play. And I feel like he's better as a complement than the focus of an offense. And Carnell Tate can take the role of the focus. But now, at number 7, you have the Washington Commanders. They've done solid in free agency. They made a few moves, brought in some younger defenders, but at the same time, their defense is still a wreck. You have a solid receiving core that I like a lot. You have Terry McLaurin, who I'm sure will get back to form after his down year last year. You have weapons like Juwan Jennings and Stephon Diggs still as free agents. You can sign one of them if you think you need a wide receiver too. But, Luke McCaffrey is there. You have guys like Jalen Lane, who I think could be great. I don't think you're going to take Mekhi Lemon or Jordan Tyson. I think instead, you're going to go obviously after a defensive weapon. Could that be Reuben Bain? I don't think it's going to be Reuben Bain. I think the Commanders are going to take the best talent in the draft. And I think they're going to go with Caleb Downs. He's, as I said, the best talent you can possibly get in the draft. I feel like it's the same issue with Kyle Hamilton. Kyle Hamilton in the 2022 class was probably the second best player you could have gotten. And everyone was questioning him as a prospect simply due to his positional value. The Ravens got him at 14, and he has been a stud in the league. Arguably the best safety in the league as well. And I think Caleb Downs has more than the capabilities to do the very same. Caleb Downs is an amazing man in coverage. He can make a play on the ball no matter what. Of course, his interception numbers were quite low, but at the same time, that's because quarterbacks don't want to challenge him. He's just that good. And I think he's exactly what the Commanders need on their defense. Their safety room was a wreck last season, and they need better men in coverage. Take the weight off some of these corners who have great talent, but need more help. And Caleb Downs is the best talent you can get for that. You get to the Saints at 8. Wide receiver is considered a big need for them. They need a big number 2. Once again, I'm going to revisit the fact that this is the deepest receiver class we've seen in a while. I feel like they can definitely get a guy in the second or third round to really help that out. Corner could be a very interesting spot to see them go, especially with a guy like Mansour Delane. You have Quincy Riley currently is the best outside corner aside from Kool-Aid McKinstry. I think you could definitely make an upgrade there. And that's exactly what I see them doing. A lot of people say they should go after a defensive lineman. I don't like that idea because you have Chase Young and Brian Breeze and Carl Granderson as 3 good talents who have good ability. Yes, Ruben Bain would probably pan out to be better than them, but at the same time, Mansour Delaney would definitely pan out to be better than probably every single corner on your roster. I think you need to have more guys in coverage. I feel like having an average defensive line and a stellar secondary is better than having a stellar defensive line but an average secondary. That's something that we see a lot. Teams will overload into one or of 2 sections, and commonly, if you spend all this money on the defensive line but kind of just have a bunch of bums as your secondary, it's not going to pan out well. Yes, they have Justin Reed, who is a great safety, but outside of that, Kool-Aid McKinstry is your best corner, and he might be gone. Mansour Delaney is the best corner in this draft, by far, I think. I think there's a wide gap between him and the next best guy, who is Jermon McCoy, most likely. And I think the Saints should absolutely take this opportunity to take Mansour Delaney. Then, you have the Chiefs. Chiefs are an interesting group to look at. You have the trade of Trent McDuffie, which has a big gap left in their room. You have Jalen Watson leaving to the Rams as well. You released Jawan Taylor. Patrick Mahomes is probably going to be hurt to start the year. Rashee Rice might leave soon. Xavier Worthy isn't panning out as the wide receiver 1 you might have wanted. Tyquan Thornton, I believe, is now the receiver 3 there as well. Travis Kelce might retire soon. Do you take Kenyon Sadiq? Or maybe wait in the second round, take Eli Stowers? Do you go after Mekhi Lemon or Jordan Tyson in this draft? Do you take Jermon McCoy at number 9? I think my personal selection for the Chiefs is going to be a surprise to some people. The Chiefs' offensive line has always had a glaring weakness at offensive tackle. You figured that out for the left side with Josh Simmons. And he's great, but he's hurt. He got hurt at the end of last season. There was a lot of concerns of him being hurt going into his NFL career. Now you have Jalen Moore starting as your right tackle, and I don't think that's going to suffice. I think you should go with the best tackle prospect in the draft and take Francis Mauigoa to truly round out your offensive line. A lot of people would find that as a surprising pick. I love that pick personally for the Kansas City Chiefs. Then you get to the Bengals at 10. It's going to be a defensive selection. Ruben Bain is still probably the second or third best defensive prospect in the draft. The Bengals should pounce at the opportunity to bring him in. You brought in Boye Mafe. That's a great move. You have Shamar Stewart. I don't think he's going to pan out in the league at all. He was hurt most of the season. He got maybe 1 tackle. He had 4.5 sacks his entire college career. I don't like him as an NFL rusher. You have Miles Murphy there, who you drafted in the first round a few years ago. He hasn't panned out. I think you need another surefire defender to go side by side with Boye Mafe. And Ruben Bain is the best edge rusher in this class, and he would be a dream for the Bengals to pick him up. Then you get to Miami at number 11. They've now traded away Jalen Waddle. They lost Darren Waller to free agency as of now. He's, I believe, still a free agent. You have no Tyreek Hill anymore. Your best receiver, I believe, is Montrell Washington. That's not the best receiver you want. He could barely make it as a receiver 2 for the team last year. You have the rumors of Devon Achane being gone. You have a very weak offensive line. You need a lot of work everywhere on offense for this team. And that's not even talking about the fact that their secondary is one of the worst secondaries in football. Overall, though, I feel like you're going to make a move at wide receiver. Jermon McCoy is the best corner available. I don't think you want to take the risk of him at 11. I think you want to take, in my opinion, the best receiver in this class. You're going to want to take Mekhi Lemon and bring him down to Miami. Now, I do want to quickly go to the side and apologize for the amount of ads appearing on this video. Mock Draft Database has a lot of them, and I do not have a job. So as a result, I cannot put my funds into Mock Draft Plus to get rid of them. So, just something that you guys are going to have to deal with for now. Anyways, going on to number 12. Dallas Cowboys are on the clock. In my recent mock draft, I had them taking Akeem Mesidor. I don't think that that's a good pick anyways, no matter what. But in that mock draft, I also didn't have Jermon McCoy available. Jermon McCoy is most likely going to be considered by every front office to be the second best corner in the draft. I personally really like Colton Hood as well. I think they're fairly even. McCoy didn't play at all in 2025 due to an injury, so that might be a concern. Can he still play at the same level that he did? Or will he have a drop in his play? Very similar to how a lot of players, when they're gone for a year or more with an injury, they usually don't pan out the same way that they did before the injury. So now, with pick 12, the Cowboys are not going to take an edge rusher. They're going to take Jermon McCoy and hopefully start to build up that secondary that used to be weirdly good a few years ago with all the same players that now is one of the worst secondaries in football. You get to the Los Angeles Rams. Now, I think they're in one of the more intriguing spots in the draft. You have a good receiving room with Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, but Adams is getting old. Do you want to move on and bring in another guy to start building up? You have a fairly good offensive line. Your biggest need is right tackle as of now with Rob Havenstein leaving. But at the same time, do you trust Spencer Fano to be a right tackle with his arm length? Monroe Freeling, I don't think that they'd make a move on a guy like Monroe Freeling. I don't see them taking one of the later offensive tackle prospects who are considered to be better for the right side. You could see them going maybe with running back if Jeremiah Love was available. You could see them try to trade up later. You could maybe see them try to pick Ty Simpson. Maybe they just build up the defensive line a little more. Again, take Peter Woods or take a guy like Keldrick Falk or even Akeem Mesidor. See them take a move on a safety. I could see them doing that as well with Dylan Thieneman especially. I think the pick I have for them is a little bit shocking to some people. They did just take Terrence Ferguson in the second round last year. They have a decent tight end room. They did bring back Higbee. I believe they took back Colby Parkinson, but he might have one elsewhere that I'm not completely educated on. But I still think they're going to take a brand new offensive weapon, and they're going to take Kenyon Sadiq to be a new true weapon at the tight end position. You then move on to the Baltimore Ravens, who have their first round pick back. I think their pick is probably one of the more obvious ones in this draft. It's going to be Vega Ione. You have lost majority of your offensive line. You now have Tyler Linderbaum gone. Daniel Falele is still in the free agency pool. I believe your other guard is also in the free agency pool. So you still have that entire space open. You signed Trey Hendrickson. That's it. That's all they've done all offseason. They've had a terrible offseason. They've lost Isaiah Likely as well, who I thought was the guy they should have extended rather than Mark Andrews. I feel like they should have tried to trade away Mark Andrews for a bit of value, but they didn't. You could maybe make the assumption they take Jordan Tyson here. I still don't see that happening. I see them without a doubt going for Vega Ione. So then when you move on to the Bucks, it's interesting. I had them take Kenyon Sadiq in my last mock draft. They re-signed Cade Otton, and Kenyon Sadiq is gone. So no matter what, I feel like they wouldn't really take him if he was available here. Could maybe see them go for a receiver with Jordan Tyson with Mike Evans gone, but I think their receiving room is great. You could see them maybe go for a guy like Peter Woods to add to the defensive line. Could maybe see them go for a guy like Keldrick Falk, Akeem Mesidor, or TJ Parker, who I like the most out of the three. I don't think that's going to happen either. You signed Alex Anzalone. I thought of it at the time as a good move that they needed to bring in a complement for Levante David. Turns out, David's retiring. You no longer have that veteran on the second level of the defense. You need a new one. You need a new big player at linebacker. I think CJ Allen is going to go here. He's my second favorite linebacker, in coverage especially. I think he's better as a linebacker prospect in the draft right away than Arvell Reese. And I think the Bucs would get a great set of play out of Arvell Reese. Now, we get to the Jets. You don't have a linebacker here that you really would probably take. Instead, I think you're going to go with a wide receiver to pair with Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson led the team in receiving yards last year with only 340. You need another big threat to work there, especially if you're going to be running in the next season with Geno Smith as your quarterback. I think Jordan Tyson will give you a good weapon. You need to hope the injury concerns stop. He's only played one full college season in his career, but if you believe that you can get past the injury issues, I think that'd be a great move for the New York Jets. Now the Lions. Last video, I talked all about how Taylor Decker said he's not going to retire, so the Lions don't need to take an offensive tackle. Well, as I was editing the video, Taylor Decker got released. And I believe he's still unsigned, which is very interesting to see. But this means the Lions need a new left tackle more than anything, I think. Decker was a great competitor. You could maybe see a guy like Frank Ragnow come back and take that center role again if he really wants to try and get healthy for that, but I think that's long gone. What I instead think is going to happen is the Lions are going to take a guy who I don't think is that good of a move, but the best, or considered the best pure left tackle in the draft, Monroe Freeling, is going to be the Lions' pick here. Now we get to the Minnesota Vikings. Dylan Thieneman has been a guy a lot of people have mocked to them for a while. I still don't know how I feel about the pick. I still think that their defensive line is something that needs the most work. You got rid of Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen, so now you have a very large gap in between guys like Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel, Dallas Turner. You have a loaded edge room, but you don't have an interior to really complement them. But at the same time, your secondary is not that good. Byron Murphy did not perform that well last season. Isaiah Rodgers was probably your best corner, but he's still in the second year of a 2-year deal he signed last offseason. So as a result, I think, yeah, you're going to take a safety. You're going to take Dylan Thieneman. So now we get to pick 19. The Carolina Panthers. I think no matter what, they're going to take a Clemson guy. I think you're either going to take Peter Woods to help complement Derek Brown. I think you're going to either take Avion Terrell to put him in the nickel, or I could maybe see you taking TJ Parker, putting him on the edge, complement a guy like Jalen Phillips, who you just signed over the offseason. Complement Princely Umanmielen. Complement Nick Scorton. You have a lot of good edge rushers, and as a result, I think that tilts their pick to Peter Woods. I don't get how he's fallen so far down draft boards. I think he's one of the better talents in the draft. I think he's a top 15 player by far. He's fallen down boards significantly over the last few months. And I found that fairly surprising. I continue to find that really surprising. But I think that will work very much into Carolina's favor. Now on to Dallas' second first-round pick of the night. You look at the edge position. They only have Donovan Ezaraku there. He's their best player by far. I think he has great potential, but I think you need a guy to complement him. You have a good interior. You don't need to move there, even with the trade of Osa to the Niners. You need to complement your current best, in my opinion, second best defensive weapon. Now, in my last draft, I did have him take Akeem Mesidor. Keldrick Falk is a good developmental piece. But I think the best one available currently is TJ Parker. And I think at this point, I feel like, and I hope, that they would take TJ Parker over Akeem Mesidor. Now the Pittsburgh Steelers at 21. They have a few gaps in their team right now. Aaron Rodgers still hasn't been signed to a contract. Do you take Ty Simpson? Maybe either try to teach him the beneath Aaron Rodgers, like how they did with Jordan Love. Maybe you take a guy like, Keldrick Falk. Have him learn behind Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt. Or go for a guy like Caden McDonald or Caleb Banks. I think what they're going to actually end up doing is going for the offensive tackle position. Isaac Seumalo signed with the Cardinals, and you have Broderick Jones still as your left tackle. As a result, your left side is kind of wide open. I still have hope that Broderick Jones can hopefully pan out, but at the same time, a lot of people don't, and that's frankly very understandable. I think what you're going to go with is a guy who plays the left side beautifully. A guy who you can play at either position, whatever you feel is more necessary. And that's going to be Caden Proctor. I feel like he's going to be very similar to Tyler Smith. The Cowboys played him at left tackle when he first came in the league. He was solid there, but eventually they kicked him inside. And now he's arguably one of the best guards in the league. And he's a guy who can play solid at tackle. I think Caden Proctor could be very similar. He could even end up better at the tackle position than Tyler Smith did. And I think the Steelers should absolutely make a move on him. Now, we go on to the Chargers. The Chargers are another team who I've found very interesting this draft process. They made a few solid moves in free agency. They didn't do as much as I would have liked to see with their money, but at the same time, I feel like they did something that was very necessary, and that was bringing in a brand new center who could play the game well. Tyler Biadazi is way better than Bradley Bozeman. I definitely would have liked to see them go for a guy like Tyler Linderbaum, but then again, the price tag was super expensive. It's almost 3 times more than what they gave Tyler. I think they still have to fill out the final gap they have in the offensive line, though. Currently, you don't have a real starting right guard. You have Joe Alt, who's at your right tackle, who got hurt early in the last season. Rashawn Slater was hurt all year. Hopefully those guys can come back and be healthy. But I think you need a guy who can play the right side. I think you need to bring in Spencer Fano. A lot of people consider him a guard prospect more than a tackle. If so, great. Your right guard has a gap. With Mekhi Becton being gone, I think you absolutely have to make a move on a guy like Spencer Fano and hope that he pans out at whatever slot you want to fill him into. Now I look at the Eagles. The Eagles are also very interesting. There's rumors that them and the Patriots have gone into a trade agreement for A.J. Brown. So do you think they'd take a receiver in order to prepare? Could definitely see them taking Denzel Boston if that's the case, but I think if anything they'd wait until either the second round or sign a guy like Juwan Jennings or make another move later on in the offseason. You could see them making a move for a guy like Caleb Lomu or Blake Miller, help at the tackle spot, especially if Lane Johnson were to leave. I feel like that would have only happened, though, if Spencer Fano fell to them. I feel like seeing Fano go one pick above would suck. I feel like if Fano was only one pick away, I feel like they'd try to trade up to maybe the Steelers at 21. But I think what they're going to end up doing is taking an edge rusher. Your edge room's been kind of weak. Your defensive room's going to be kind of weak. Jalen Carter's being talked about getting traded. I think that would suck. I think he's probably the best player on your team. And I think you need to do whatever you can to keep him. But then again, players are expensive. You can't keep everyone. I think what they need to do is start preparing the absolute best they can for if they are planning to lose Jalen Carter. I think the best man you can take for that defensive line is Keldrick Falk. He would feast on that defense. He has amazing measurables, and I think if you use him properly as he should be used, he will make amazing plays, especially with guys like Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis on the interior beside him. Keldrick Falk was amazing as a prospect. Auburn, I believe, used him terribly, and I genuinely think he can pan out to be the second best edge rusher in this class, especially over David Bailey. When you get to the Browns at 24, I feel like at this point it becomes a very obvious selection. You look at the Browns, what do they need? A left tackle. What do they take? They take a left tackle. They're going to take the next best, and in my opinion, the best pure left tackle in the draft, and that's going to be Caleb Lomu from Utah. The second of the Utah tackles, and I think he would absolutely be an amazing selection for the Cleveland Browns at 24. Now you get to the Bears at 25. I think their defensive line is a bit crowded. You have a lot of edge rushers that are mediocre and a lot of defensive linemen that are mediocre. You can maybe hope for some of these guys to take another step. As a result, I don't think it would really be that smart to bring in another defensive lineman with this early of a pick. I definitely think with your 2 second-rounders, you should bring in an edge rusher and maybe even a defensive lineman as well, especially a guy maybe like Dominique Orange or even Darrell Jackson. I could definitely see you making a move in the second round on guys like Derek Moore, Donnie Dennis-Sutton, Joshua Josephs. I think overall, you should go safety, and you should go Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. Your secondary took a bit of a hit for free agency. Jaquan Brisker went to the Steelers. Kevin Byard, I believe, is still a free agent. You could maybe bring him back if he's not signed. You did get in Kobe Bryant to fit in one of those spots. I think you need the other gap filled, and Emmanuel McNeil-Warren does that wonderfully for you. Now Buffalo. Buffalo's also in a very weird position. You traded for DJ Moore, which is great. Do you still take another receiver? I don't think that's going to happen anymore. You didn't make many moves in free agency. You did manage to keep Connor McGovern, but David Edwards left. Maybe you want to make a move on a guard like Emmanuel Pregnon, but I still don't think he's going to be worth pick 26. I think they are going to be the team that takes Akeem Mesidor from Miami. Even with Landon Jackson there, who I think can absolutely develop to be a great edge rusher in the league, I think you need a guy who you think you can have immediately make an impact. Greg Rousseau doesn't put up the stats you want out of a guy who you're paying that much money to. I think Akeem Mesidor has a better ability to put up a lot more stats in the league, especially when the defensive line is kind of getting focus from everywhere. You have a lot of solid D linemen, and I think Akeem Mesidor would be able to help lift them up a little bit. Teams might bring more attention to him, and that would also help the stats that your defensive line puts up. San Francisco, also a very weird team. Brandon Ayuk is probably gone at some point. You're kind of holding him hostage at this point because you think you can get some sort of value out for him in a trade. I don't think any team is going to trade for Brandon Ayuk. Do you still release him at that point? I feel like you should, because Ayuk's not going to play for you again, I don't think. I still think no matter what, Ayuk ends up in Washington, whether it's for a far future 7th round pick or he gets released and signs a cheap deal with them. If Washington knows what Daniels wants, I think they'll give it to him, and that's another reason why I didn't have Washington picking a receiver. Ayuk is likely going to head there. So as a result, do you take a receiver? I mean, you have Mike Evans, who got hurt last season. Do you think that he might get hurt again? You have Ricky Pearsall, who spends a lot of time hurt. You lost Juwan Jennings, who was very reliable. Your receiver room is very weak. I definitely could see them going for another receiver, especially a guy like Denzel Boston, who I've always been a very big fan of. Definitely not as much as, say, Casey Concepcion or even Chris Brazell, but I still think it's highly likely that they go there. Do you see them go offensive tackle? It's highly likely you're also not going to end up having Trent Williams this season. So could you take Blake Miller? Could you take Max? Maybe run the reach on Gennings Dunker, who I've seen some people put in the first round. We all know, though, the Niners have never really seemed to put their chips into drafting linemen. I don't know why. I mean, it worked out pretty well for them last time, that I can clearly remember them spending a high pick on a lineman. But overall, they never seem to make a move on a lineman when they clearly, I think, need it. I believe Blake Miller would be a great addition, but I don't think they're going to take him. I think instead they're going to bring in a complement to Mike Evans and Pearsall and have him learn behind the veteran Mike Evans. He has a similar play style. I think that if you have Evans truly school him up for a while, he'll become a great player, and he'll be a wonderful downfield threat for the Niners. Now you get to Houston at number 28. It's a trench pick, no matter what you want to say. Offensive tackle, edge, D-line, interior. I don't think an interior lineman's worth this pick. I feel like if you take anyone at defensive tackle, it's going to be either Caleb Banks or Christian Miller. But I don't feel like you're going to make that move here. You could maybe take another edge rusher and pair them with Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter, who might be gone soon because he's getting old. But I think you're going to take an offensive tackle, and I think you're going to take one of my favorites, Blake Miller. CJ Stroud needs to be protected. He's had a clear fall off in play the last few years. I personally believe that to be due to the simple mishandling the front office has given him. He's had a very weak offensive line all the years. His receiving core was relatively injury prone the entire time. He had a great rookie season. That's because teams didn't know how to play around him. Teams learned how to play against him after his first year. Now he's considered fairly one-dimensional, most likely by most defenses. It's fairly easy to beat him because now you have the film on him, and the team is not helping to develop him further. I think you need to put more protection around him and put more resources into helping Stroud expand what he can do in the league. Now you get to the second first round pick of the Chiefs. You take an offensive tackle with Francis Mauigoa first. You have a lot of openings still. Edge rusher. Do you see them maybe take Zion Young, Cassius Howell, or Mason Thomas? Defensive line. Could you see them maybe make a move there with a guy like Caleb Banks, Christian Miller, or Caden McDonald? Have them pair beside Chris Jones. Do you see them take a receiver, Omar Cooper Jr., especially as a weapon I could see them taking, as I feel like he kind of complements Rashee Rice in a similar way. He's very similar, I think. I think Rashee Rice is better, but I feel like a lot of people see Omar Cooper as a guy who is very much like Rashee Rice in almost every way of his play. I think, though, that you have to take a good corner here. You need to find a guy who can kind of try to fill into Trent McDuffie's role, and Avion Terrell is probably the best corner to make that play with. Trent McDuffie always played better in the nickel. Avion Terrell is primarily a nickel. And I think you could kick him into the outside, but overall, Terrell is especially stand out as a nickel corner, and I feel like you need a new replacement anywhere on the secondary. The Miami Dolphins, once again, their second first-round pick. They took Mekhi Lemon with their first rounder. You need to help build up either the rest of the offense. You could take Max or Gennings Dunker. You could take Emmanuel Pregnon or even Chase Besantis if you liked him enough. You could go after the D-line with Cassius Howell or Caleb Banks. I don't think you need a linebacker. Your linebacker core is actually very solid compared to the rest of the defense. There's no safety I think is worth taking here, with either A.J. Halsey or Kamari Ramsey being considered the top guys. I like Zakee Wheatley a lot, but not to the point, obviously, of a first-round pick. I think one of my favorite corners in this draft will go here, Colton Hood. I argue that he could very well be the second best corner in this draft behind Mansour Delaney. And I think overall, the Dolphins need a talent of his degree to slowly start building up that defensive secondary again. Now the New England Patriots, the losers of the Super Bowl. A team that, in my Denver Broncos biased opinion, should not have been there. Bo Nix's injury absolutely hindered the Broncos from making it to the Super Bowl. If he was available, Broncos would have been there, and it would have been a much more entertaining game. But enough about my coping mechanism of the Denver Broncos having missed the Super Bowl. The Patriots are going, without a doubt, to pick a receiver. You released Stephon Diggs, who was your best receiver, without a doubt, in my opinion. I think you'd take KC Conception. Omar Cooper Jr., while a decent receiving talent, I don't think he's first-round worthy. I feel like he has a skill set much more similar to that of a backfield threat. I feel like if you played him as a receiver out of the backfield, especially at a running back slot, that could work out the best. But I don't think the Patriots need that. I think they need KC Conception. He's a guy who can stretch the field, who can make great movements with his feet, really move around in the field at any level. I think he can beat out almost half of the starting corners in this league. And I think the Patriots should absolutely be looking to bring him into the team. Now Seattle, your Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks. Sam Darnold had a legendary season. I love to see it from him. He really deserved that more than anything. You lose Kenneth Walker. That's going to sting a little bit, but at the same time, as a complete Zach Charbonnet believer, because I have him on 30 of my Dynasty fantasy teams, and I love the receiving core, so that makes it so that Omar Cooper Jr. is unnecessary. You don't need a tight end. I think with both A.J. Barner and Elijah Arroyo there, it's a great group to have. Your offensive line still can use some work, but I don't think there's a guy you'd want to take here. I think you need to help the secondary. You lost Tariq Woolen. You did keep Josh Joby. You lost Kobe Bryant as well, though. That's another very big hindrance to your team. So I think the move's going to have to be in the secondary. And same as my last mock draft, I still have Seattle going and taking Brandon Cisse out of South Carolina. And that's it. That is my third mock draft of the offseason. I will have one more mock draft come out the Monday before the draft. I'm very excited to see how it pans out. I feel like this is a very unpredictable mock draft in comparison to how a lot of the last few years have gone. There's a lot of great talent all across the board, and I feel like everyone is fairly even with each other for the most part. You have the few standout prospects, and then you just have everyone else. I don't feel like there's a huge talent shift from, say, guys like Jermon McCoy down to Brandon Cisse, or guys like Jordan Tyson down to Kevin Conception. I think overall this is going to be a very interesting draft class to see. We're going to know what the GMs think. I feel like we could see guys like Keldrick Falk go in the top 10. People like Akeem Mesidor or maybe Monroe Freeling drop out of the first round. I feel like Vega Ione could go anywhere from the top 10 down to the Chargers at 22. I feel like there's a very large extension that players can go in this draft that we haven't seen in a very long time. But with that, thank you guys so much for watching. I was very happy to make this once again. As always, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications so that you don't miss another KGC take. So, with that, everybody, I've been your host. I was KGC, and that was my take.